that's the goal, is to have a life-size representation of all the different calibers, because some of them, as you go through each suit chronologically from ace to king, they go from black powder to like the volcanic, its own unique round cartridges, and then they can start getting bigger. So the goal, they're not all 100% true right now, but we'll calibrate them and get them all to be life size, and then that way you can kind of fan the deck the opposite way, and then really start seeing the variety of the ammunition back then.
I didn't see my Zouave rifle in there.
Which one?
Zouave.
It was kind of tough because there's only 13 cards in each suit, right? And I did want to divide it up, so it was a little tough, and that's why I was glad to have some people sit down with me and decide if these were the best choices for like the 13
rifles. Something out, whatever you do.
Well, really? It's a representation of the firearms of the Old West, and I mean,
and after they sell 1 million decks of this, we can do modern firearms of the Old West.
That would actually be pretty neat.
That is just way cool. So it's a Kickstarter project, and we've got a couple of days left on the funding for that, and then.
Okay, so yeah, you're right. It'll end on the 26th. So I had it start on the 26th of May, which is John Wayne's birthday, right? And then it's going to end on the 26th, which is the anniversary of Heller decision. So just two dates work out really well. So it'll end on the 26th. Kickstarter will charge everybody who's participating in it their cards, and then somewhere around 15 days later, they'll send me whatever the money minus their fees, and then I can get started. I've already talked to the printer in Texas. So I'll send them the final artwork, and we'll probably do a sample deck, make sure everything's good to go, and then get in line. These printing presses probably run 24/7, but it's just get in line. So all the funds will be transferred to me. I'll transfer them all to the printer. We're going to have some stickers made up. The Kickstarter, or with the deck itself, everybody who participates is going to get a Velcro patch. Cool. So kind of, for like, all the gear now has Velcro panels on it, or your old BDUs and stuff have Velcro.
Ever think of maybe doing a Faro deck? With the ones that you didn't have in this deck?
I thought about it because once I went down to look at some of the decks in Tombstone, those old decks are kind of neat. So one suggestion we did get is to make it look kind of parchment, but we're kind of deciding if that's going to look good overall, to kind of give them that old look, that yellow look.
The representation that you're doing there, I mean, when the cards first came out in the Old West, you get a new deck. I mean, there was no parchment or anything like that, or color to it.
Well, it's funny, back in those days, they actually had card presses, because the old cards had a tendency to curl up. And so you'd have a little box with a little metal weight on it. And I actually can remember as a kid playing with cards that would start to curl, and I could never figure out why they did that. Now doing the research, I said, oh, okay, because it was part of the process.
I mean, they're really just paper, a little bit heavier duty
and
paper.
There's all different ways of doing it. One of the ways was that they would take, once the card was printed and everything, they would go over it with just a real fine skim of soap, and then press it with heat, and then do it again, and then press it with heat. And I think that the pressing process is what made the cards want to curl.
Almost like starch and collars or something.
Yeah. Well, we've got you on the show because this is such a cool project, but also you want to dedicate this to Emil.
Yeah.
And for that, we really appreciate that. So.
Well, like I said, a big part of this, doing it at the Old West Cards, was because of the show. I've been listening to this for a long time. Now you guys get into the music and the locations and stuff, which I'm interested in, but the guns, whenever you guys get into the guns, I can geek out as much as the next guy.
Well, the gun was one of the most important parts for a cowboy in the Old West, or for anybody in the Old West.
Seriously.
I mean, survival.
And what I've found over the years when I'm listening to you guys is I would turn on the internet, right, and I'd be following along, because as much as you hear about the Walker or the Peacemaker, the SAA, you hear about all these guns, especially you guys that are fluent, like knowledgeable about them, you're just rolling them off the cuff. I'm always, which one was this? So one of the formats I like about a playing card, as opposed to a book or something where they're bound and you can only go from page to page. I like the idea that you can have two of them in your hand and get in with the dates on here of when they were produced and the numbers produced. It puts history in a little bit different experience. And I figure just when you're bored and you're thumbing through it, you kind of get an idea. Oh, I see. There was a lot more of these made than I thought, or there's very few of the revolving rifles made.
It's like the Army Colt. Everybody thinks it's the gun that won the West, but there wasn't that many made. Like 40 some odd thousand. Something like that. It was Army issue, and if the millions of people heading west, it spread pretty thin.
Well, the Colt, I mean, it came in different calibers. There was a 36, there was a 44, and it was a Hickok carried 36 calibers.
And this is percussion model.
Percussions, yeah. And I still don't know. He must have carried a number of chambers with him, or
cylinders.
Well,
cylinders.
And part of his lore is the fact that every morning his routine was to clean the guns and reload the cylinders. So
shoot them every morning, right?
Fresh cylinders every morning. So he never trusted it even for a day. Like,
well, and that's pretty accurate, having done Civil War reenactments.
There's
you don't just assume.
You go back to the old percussion models, and you'll see guys like the old Wild Bill show with jingles, and he would shoot every time he shoot, he'd throw his gun back and shoot again. And as a kid, I always thought that was just a character thing. Turns out with those old percussion models like that, they did that on purpose so that any metal left from the cap would fall away and not get into the chamber.
And if it gets into the chamber, boy, you are toast.
You went from a pistol to a club.
Yeah, pretty much. So talk about your website channel and such.
Gun websites? Well, we've been doing that for a long time now. Back in 2004 or something, I suppose we started all that. And I've always been interested. I used to work at AOL, so I've always been interested in the internet and where it's going to go. So back, Bob from Tucson Guns, started working with him and helping him out on his website. So when those guys would head out to the range to maybe test fire a new gun or check something after gunsmithing, I would just tag along. And for a while there, we were doing stuff on the internet, just websites. And somewhere around 2008 or 9, YouTube came along and allowed us to put videos up, which was very expensive back then. So YouTube made it practical. So a lot of us were putting videos up there, maybe to explain something. I know it's an old West show, but for a Kalashnikov, for example, if you're taking the front handguard off, it's sort of a motorcycle throttle. And you try to describe that to somebody, and you could just show them in a video. It literally took 30 seconds to show someone that in a video. You twist that wood off, and then they understand how you can get it off without breaking it. So for just little reference things like that, posting them and referencing them in forums when we would have conversations, and it grew from there. And eventually, somewhere around 2011 or something, YouTube started to pay people to do that. So it was real fun for a little while.
It's a labor of love. It's paying.
It was for a while there, and then it's nothing lasts forever. But definitely, it's a fun place. There's it's neat to play on the internet and to see where it's going with the advent of phones and the power that these phones have. With right now, I'm streaming our podcast live. You can walk into any gun shop, take pictures. So I'm really all about creating communities out there and trying to get people to share their love of firearms along with whatever else it is, motorcycles, cooking, whatever. Because then when they're known to do, right, and they're going to say gun owners are this and gun owners are that and gun owners are this. Well, when everybody knows, my grandfather, my uncle, that friend from church or school or work, and everything else, they're normal people. I just want to inspire that because it's so easy. Look what we're doing here. We're broadcasting to the world.
That on your thing, have you ever done like cast iron cooking?
sites,
but I'm a scout, so I've been cooking up at Dutch ovens my whole life. I really appreciate it.
Probably do something on that someday.
You know, amazing that you.
You started doing it.
Yeah, amazing you mentioned that. My sister-in-law, when she was visiting here, got me this cookbook from the Lodge folks, and the book is written by the descendants of the Lodge, who began the Lodge with cast iron, and there's some really good recipes. And I've got I can't remember who wrote it now. She'll kill me because of that.
Not shoveling peach cobblers to die for.
The Cowboy Cookbook, and it has great recipe. I don't cook anything. It's in cast iron or not. I mean, I've switched out of Revereware and all that other stuff. Cast iron lasts so much.
No more Corningware.
It's the original nonstick.
It is. It is. I mean,
well, you think about it, cast iron to cook because you get minerals and stuff out of it. Yeah. You don't get the minerals you get out of a copper yeah. pot is not healthy for you. Aluminum can kill you eventually if you live long enough to die, I guess.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but it's easy to clean.
Yeah.
It's easy to keep seasoned. And it's just and it's a good weapon too.
Yeah, and if you burn something in it, you just scour it and go on again. It doesn't. You can't destroy it.
It's like a '55 Buick, man. It's in an accident. You just goes off the dash and so again. Go ahead and Bunker, talk about some of the early card games that you researched there.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go back to the early stuff. A pack of cards with a plaid back have the heart name on them for the Ace of Spade, which is lettered California Poker Deck and pictures 249ers on it. They figure the most likely were invented in the Far East. They arrived in Europe around the same time as money and gunpowder, paper money, and I call that the Marco Polo of that, and that's just with the trading. And by the early 14th century, the 1300s, they were very widespread in France. So Europe, by the 1400s, everybody played cards. It was
not just the royalty.
Yeah, not just even the common people. Cards were brought over to the Americas by the Spaniards, and Cortez and his soldiers. I've got a year here somewhere. Anyhow, one of his men, Pedro Valenciano, hand-painted cards on drumheads, and so the first cards made in America were by Cortez's people around the 1590s or whatever that was. It's an assumption that cards in America were spread by soldiers, colonial people, trappers, anybody, the expansion. Apache, their exposure to because there's a history in the Southwest of the Apaches making their own playing cards, which is pretty much unique among all of the Indians. They seem to be the only ones that made their own. Probably because the Eastern Indians had a more open, free trade. The Apache, their trade kind of depended on whether the Mexicans or the Spaniards at that time were paying stay away. And when they weren't, they'd make their own. And they made the first ones they'd figure out of horsehide. Over time, they used pretty much the same suit markings as the Spaniards did, just pretty much copied it. And over time, they brought in their own or into it. There's an interesting thing there is that Apache tell how they learned of cards from the Mexican culture, and legends give it to a superior being, Gazni, slayer of monsters. And again, the Apache and all of the American Indians were very heavily into gambling and gaming. In fact, if you look at the Aztecs, they gamed with heads.
Well, yeah.
That's right.
The Mayans played soccer with heads.
Yeah.
Or what we call soccer today.
Yeah.
Were those cards, those original cards, the same suits and the 52?
Pretty much the same suits. They copied, and one of the things there is they had suits that was like swords, coins, cups, and I can't remember what the fourth one was.
But still four played in the similar
pretty much
games.
the same. And then of course over time they brought in some of their own stuff, like with the clubs. It would be more like war clubs, or just instead of like the traditional European club. That was what they would do. Now there is let me see if I can find that here in my notes, just because this was kind of interesting. There is here. Oh, the heck with it.
Well, all right, we'll take a break while you look for that information.
Okay.
And folks, this is the Voices of the West. We're talking with Pete from gunwebsites.com and Bunker de France. I'm Harry. We'll be right back.
So the break is real time?
Yeah. We're going to go 53 minutes, 49 seconds to accommodate the other station. Otherwise, I'd go full 60 minutes.
There was many a poker game on Gunsmoke.
Oh, yeah.
Many a shooting over poker on Gunsmoke.
Oh, yeah. All of my music is themed on guns today.
when you say the Dutch oven stuff, yeah, you could probably just do Dutch ovens in movies. Think of all the scenes that were around the Dutch oven.
Sherry Monahan, that's who wrote the Cowboy Cookbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, my God, what a great book.
I'm gonna have to bring my old down to breakfast someday and let you peek at it.
Okay.
You can't touch it though, because I know if you get your hands on it, I'll have to fight you to get it back.
It'll suddenly disappear, right?
Oh, this cookbook is back in the Midwest chapter, and they went out and they gathered all of the recipes from all over Nebraska, the Dakotas, and
they're like
it's
family
amazing.
recipes.
Oh yeah, and there's like suet pie, and it's like take 5 pounds of lard. But I mean, and it's just about porcupine recipes, deer, elk, anything you can eat. There's a recipe for it.
Yeah.
Hell, I mean, it's just fun reading. And some of that stuff you go, I don't know what I want to, just any kind of berry, they can make a pie out of it.
Yeah. So this facility supplies you with all the equipment?
No, all of this is mine, and they just give us the space.
Oh, okay.
This is Bruce Ash's office complex. Dad started Paul Ash Management. Stand by.
And we're back with Harry Alexander at the controls, Bunker here, yabbering on, and Pete Phillip, our guest. And today we're talking about Old West playing cards with pistols and derringers and long guns and shotguns.
And those are on the playing cards. We're not talking about playing the card game with those firearms.
You mean I've got to put it back in the holster? Okay. Well, Pete, we've talked about what was the thing when you got the idea? We all get ideas and we're going to make us rich and famous, but then they sit on the shelf. What was it that took you from, well, this is a great idea to I'm going to do it?
Well, okay, that's a good question. It's something that I wanted to do a project. So I really like doing these Kickstarter projects. They allow us to network. They allow us to get Second Amendment stuff up on Kickstarter. There's 6.4 million people or something like that up on Kickstarter. Things obviously come some anti stuff, but very few pro gun related things. Mm-hmm. So I like to see projects up there for one. I just wanted to do something that could put history in a little different way. Got some other ideas, but like I say, the form factor really is neat. And I don't know if you remember, there was some trading cards back in the day. You'd buy them off the TV and they'd send you a few every once in a while. I never got those, but that was the only other thing I could think of where and like I say, when I'm listening to your show and you guys are talking about a particular rifle or a pistol, or if I'm hanging out at the gun shop and so they're talking about something and it's just frustrating sometimes. Where did that one? And for me, having a timeline, seeing them all in order, maybe seeing when some of the wars happened, so I have some relation, like or when maybe the cotton gin was invented. I like to think of that. So when I start to picture it, I can think of history a little bit better. So for me, it just was a form factor. And it was a kind of a project that I'd say these things don't need to exist, but because that Kickstarter allows us to basically what people are going to think of it first, we get to do market research before we even go to print. It's the best way to see if there's even interest in it.
The free market at its best.
Right. And then it's fun. So I get to go down to Tombstone and talk to the people down there. We talked to Tina's Mercantile. That's the one in the very east end of town, right? And where they have all the fake guns and stuff for sale. They're going to carry
them. That's a great point to place to buy cards like that, because the people that are coming down there, this is what they're interested in.
Hopefully. And if they go into Tina's, they're looking at the guns and stuff.
And I just had the thought, back in the 1400s in Europe, the royalty would use the young, the things that they knew to be princes and kings. And if like there's the early flashcards. And so I was all of a sudden I'm thinking, this is kind of like a flashcard for American kids. They, you know, come over to grandpa's house, he can give them a deck of cards to play with, and they can play Go Fish and Old Maid with gun cards.
Exactly.
Nothing wrong with that.
I like it.
So that's because of that, because I like to create projects like this and just inspire people to get out and make something like this. So I just think they're neat.
Did you have
projects
any
to do.
pushback, as it were, from anybody because this is a Second Amendment type of issue?
No, not with this one at all.
Cool.
I haven't really on the last one. There's the card people that are really into cards. There's quite a few really big Kickstarter projects for just playing cards.
Wow.
Think of like magic tricks and just doing manipulations with cards. People really enjoy that. So that's a pretty big thing. I didn't even know that there was that many people out there. They don't appreciate them only because they're not artistic enough. It has nothing to do with them being Second Amendment. They don't like it. It's just that they don't want cards that don't have a similar pattern on all of them.
Yeah, fleur-de-lis or whatever. And all that.
Yeah, they expect their cards to be kind of consistent. That's just a preference thing.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Well, you know, that's so weird too, because you know, in my research, I went to two different books: the Apache book, which is about 3 inches thick, and the History of the Playing Card, which is about 3 inches thick. And one of the things that comes out of that is the fact of the variety and the different ways that they, not just the face, but the backs. And there really, there is no standardization until about late in the 1800s. One company, I've got it here somewhere, they started making the standard queen that we see today.
And that just caught on.
If you look at all the playing cards, even the ones today, the ace of spade is their signature card for the company, and they're all over the place in their design and how they do that.
When did they start putting numbers on the card? Did you?
People figured how many fingers they had on each hand. Well,
but you're right. Back in the Tombstone days, there was no
here.
Numbers, just the pips.
Okay. Cards offer an overview of heraldry, geography, history, and the social and political activities of man over the last 6 centuries. Cards have been a way of one of the things that makes cards so interesting to people that do history and research is that playing cards are also a history of the printing process, of the art, and reflecting of the culture, the way it showed up. In America during the Civil War, there were Union cards and there were Confederate cards. The Confederate cards were made in London.
Yeah, right, exactly, because no red would be caught dead with a pack of Yankee cards.
I know. Let me see if I can find it here. Because this is kind of neat. Oh, Union cards made by American Card Company in 1862 had for their red suits the American flags and stars, for the blue suits, shields, and American eagles. The kings are infantry officers in full dress, the queens, goddesses of liberty, and the jacks are artillery commissioned officers in fatigue uniform. And I thought you'd appreciate the artillery part.
Of course. that is way cool. I never realized Kickstarter had. I'm gonna have to go search that because I've got tons of ideas that float around, and sure, I'd love to have somebody fund them except me, or besides me.
Well, like I say, it gives you a way to do some market research. You can have a prototype or not. You can really just put a basic concept out there. Related movies that were made through Kickstarter funding. So, yeah, it's a really neat platform.
What about your collection of firearms?
Yeah, I've definitely collected them over the years. I guess I used the excuse that I was doing the YouTube videos, right? So it's always easy.
Yeah.
That's a tax write-off.
But I'm a big fan of the little revolvers. So the NA revolvers and the precursors to that. And then one day I was out at the range and I had borrowed a friend's the Raven, not the Raven, the new one, the Phoenix Arms 22. I don't know if you played with that little one, the one that's made recently in California. So it complies with all the California laws. It's got a safety on the frame. It's got a safety on the slide. It's got a magazine disconnect. And as I was looking at this gun and doing this review and thinking, why did they put so many safeties on this thing? I didn't want to just be doing a video of
Sure.
why I didn't like this gun. That doesn't do anybody any
Yeah.
service.
Yeah.
So I sat down on a Thursday and tried to figure out why this gun had so many safeties on it. And I started to discover just the whole story of the Saturday Night Specials, quote unquote, the Ring of Fire guns, the Zamek guns that were made in California at the beginning in 1968 as a result of the 1968 Gun Control Act. Right. One of the reasons they did the Gun Control Act was to stop the importation of inexpensive small revolvers and pistols. So that didn't affect the demand at all, of course. So these guys, as an aerospace engineer, George Jennings in California, decided, oh, I can swap my factory over from doing airplane parts to these inexpensive pistols. And that started a whole thing. And as I did the research, it turned out that there was one researcher who went and talked to these people back in the 80s. And then there was a special on PBS, and there had been no other research. Everyone else just cited those two instances. And I thought, wow, how lazy, right?
Yeah, really.
And there's all these gun things that people are looking down on these guns and throwing them away, basically saying these are the cheap guns. You know, these guns, why do these even exist? Which is an easy thing to say if you don't think about it. But when you start to do research on those particular guns, there's doctors and other people in California who use those guns as their tip of their spear on why firearms are so bad. So they're going to say things like, you know, these are used more in crime, or there's some problem with these. Well, it's just like saying Fords get more flat tires.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of Fords on the road, you're going to get a lot of flat tires. They don't talk about that the 1911 or the Smith & Wesson Model 10 are
And
used in crime
how you
even
operate
more.
the car and how it affects the tire.
Exactly. So I just got into that, and I started to collect a little Ring of Fire guns. So my collections are like that. I have a bunch of little 22s, a little 22 revolvers, and then I have a whole bunch of the Saturday Night Special guns. They're really inexpensive, and it's kind of fun to try to get them to work again because they do fall apart. But it's also just neat to see the lineage, because it happens to be a really interesting story about how the father and his son, and then the daughter, and then cousins and other family members.
And you know, that's actually, it's pretty much a reflection of the Old West too. Because, you know, if a guy, especially a cowboy who didn't make much money, if he went into town and bought a gun, because most of them didn't own guns, but if he went in and bought a gun, he didn't go out there and buy a Colt because that was top of the line and cost money. He would go out and buy one of these English imports or something like that and pay around $1. It was just anything. And that's what people lose sight of, is that there's a difference between what you're buying, why you're buying, what you do with it after you buy it.
You know, what the tool's for.
Yeah.
I have a old Charter Arms 38, and I love that thing. You know, I guess they call that a Saturday Night Special as well. I don't know. It's I use it any night of the week.
7 days a week.
But it's a fine little revolver. I love revolvers because the arthritis doesn't allow me to rack a slide anymore. So you know, that's where I'm at.
I've got an old 22 Sears high standard that I've had for over 60 years. That one of the first guns my dad I had my first gun when I was around 10. But I mean, I shot that old high standard, and I could go down to the hardware store and buy the 22 long rifles for a penny, because it's in a barrel. You grab a handful, go there and say, well, that's 67 cents. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since you talked about the prices, that's one of the things that I've been looking for. So maybe you or one of your listeners might be able to help me out. So I've got on the cards here, if we look at them, you know, at the top of the card, it has the name of the years that it was in production, and then the number that were produced. And again, all that's, I think, kind of interesting as you kind of thumbing through them.
Good history.
So some of the stuff like caliber and barrel length, you guys kind of mentioned it, that some of these guns are made in different calibers. So I tried to put the most common calibers. I mean, some were just one, so it's easy.
You can't cover everything.
Exactly. And then barrel lengths, you know, most of these guns, some of them were a la carte. You could buy it, you know, from the factory, this barrel, that.
Special made.
Exactly. So, you know, without getting all the extremes in there, one of the things I found I think would be super interesting, but I haven't been able to find a source to get enough from all these cards, is what their prices were at the time. So I know that, for example, I think it was, I have one of them in here with the price, and it was like $40. But if you think about it, that was like 3-4 months of the guy's income. So
did you check with the Sears, the catalogs? They may not go back far enough for some of those guns, but some of them,
that's a good idea, honestly.
But some of those, you know, might be there.
And now that you said that, I don't know why I didn't think of the Bannerman catalog. They might, I mean, that's not going to be historic prices.
Museum out here too, because they, in fact, one of the guys
The one on the U of A?
that did the book on the Apache playing cards, I've got him here, Alan Ferg, and he's archivist out there. And because he did the book on Apache playing cards, he might be interested in helping you on that.
Right on.
Yeah, that could be the second or third edition run of the cards. Yeah. I'm willing to bet those things are going to.
Well, I'm not sure. I've like I say, I've got them at I've talked to some of the stores in Tombstone, so I know they're going to be in Tina's, and the guys at the pistol parlor where you shoot the the real guns at the steel targets. They have a pistol poker game room in the back, so they're looking at them. And I didn't think about old Tucson. But then the Cody, Wyoming, or the Buffalo Bill Museum up in Cody, they're going to carry them.
Western amusement parks or Western museums. Like, something you might think about would be to send a deck to the Autry Museum out in California, and do a write up about yourself, about the cards, and little history, and just donate it to them and see what they do with it. They might just go, "What you think?" and we'll put it in our vault, or they might say, "Hey, this is something," and mention it because they do a little publication about the museum.
I know when they're available. I'm buying one to play, a set to play, and then another one as just a collector, as it were. And I just think it is so cool to have something. We could maybe talk the Empire Ranch into selling up some of these.
I think, in the gift shop, definitely.
Yeah.
Because they're obligated to us because we just mentioned the Empire on the air.
We're going to be mentioning them again right after this commercial break. So let's do that, and then we will be right back.
Yeah, thanks for letting me mention that, because that was something that it's been bugging me.
No problem.
I think that'd be so neat, but I didn't think of the Sears catalog. They won't have every gun for sure, but even if I could get a handful of them, I think it'll give some examples.
Yeah, you just need a general idea.
Because it's one of those things when you're a kid and you look at it, you go, $24,
$5.
I remember looking at the catalogs and thinking that. It makes me think too. I didn't think of the J.M. Davis Museum.
Yeah.
They might be interested in their gift shop there.
Rex Allen Museum down in Wilcox.
Wilcox, maybe. I have heard that the museum is hurting, but those guys have a way of resurrecting themselves. Just because as soon as the fans get word of oh my God, we can't let this happen.
Western Riders of America. I'll shoot you people to contact there, and they might be able to help out in some fashion with it. Because I think.
Well, what's neat is because it's been funded.
Perfect guy,
because it's been funded with the Kickstarter project. It's not like I have to go get the minimum order from the place. I can get them in enough quantity that I can bring them to like Tombstone at a decent $4 wholesale. So that lets the museums make some money. So that'd be better.
We'll have about 8 minutes to do too. Never mind.
Did you lose track of time?
No, it's Tucson Unified School District math.
Oh.
Jeez Louise.
Where's Joe when you need him?
I know, huh? If I don't have an analog clock to look at.
Yeah. I don't like digital clocks.
No.
Do you guys record from here every week then?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take that much.
And both of us are board members of the Empire Ranch Foundation.
Oh, okay.
On a standby.
I'm not bored. What do you mean?
I know.
And we're back with Harry Alexander at the controls, Bunker DeFrance Yabbern over here, and our guest, Pete Phillip. We're talking about playing cards, and as long as we've kind of mentioned movies, I want to run some movies by us that had poker played a part of them.
Okay.
And one of them, I love this one, Poker at Dawson City, made in 1899. It was a black and white, obviously, the Edison Manufacturing Company. And it was about card players during the Alaskan Gold Rush get into a fight over cheating.
Yeah, imagine that.
Did that even happen?
Now, moving forward a few years, the Ace of Clubs, 1926, another silent 60-minute with Al Hoxie as the lead. And in this one, again, it was just cowboys playing cards and whatnot. And it's kind of been described as a slap together production. Now we're moving up into the talking period. We have one called Aces and Eights, 1936, and it starred Ken McCoy. Rex Leese was in it, another one of the early cowboy heroes. And the storyline in that was that McCoy was a gambler who's come to this small town to fleece it. And the comment about it was slow paced, saved by McCoy's performance as a gambler. Then, of course, we move up now into the television era. A returning and recurring part of Gunsmoke throughout the years. In the Long Branch, somebody was always getting cheated or shot over a poker game. And moving further into the TV era, Maverick, which was built all around the fact that we have as a con man gambler in the Maverick family, two brothers, actually turns out to be a third brother and a cousin from England.
Yep.
And
didn't see them too often, though.
No, well, the third cousin, the third brother, they brought him in because Garner, they were having
contract
disability. And so he did a couple episodes. Then they went so far as to put him into Garner's clothes, but it didn't do anything. The show went on after that. Yeah. And of course, we played the theme from this earlier, Have Gun Will Travel. Paladin played a lot of poker. He loved poker. And then moving into the more modern era, A Big Hand for a Little Lady. That was with Henry Fonda, Jason Robards, Burgess Meredith, and that was 1966. 5-card stud. Not too shabby a picture. Dean Martin.
Yeah, I saw that.
Robert Mitchum. And it's all based on the fact that these 6 guys in a poker game, 5 of them hang one of the guys. And Martin is the sheriff. Mitchum is the brother of the hangman, and he's a preacher. And they're trying to find out who's killing all of these guys. There's a kind of a serial murder. Funnily enough, it's the preacher.
Imagine that.
That's
a good movie.
Yeah. And then here's one I kind of like. This is an Italian one. Aces High. And that's with Terrence Hill, Eli Wallach, and the ever-present Bud Spencer. And it's just an action, a lot of Italian violence, and it's fun to look at. Porco Alice, which they shot here in Tucson. It was a TV movie with Elizabeth Taylor. And I'm going to finish up with Maverick again, the movie with Garner back as the marshal, who turns out to be Pappy, but not but not grandpappy.
No, not Grandpappy. How many times I've never seen it written into the scripts at the High Chaparral where there's card games going on.
Not too many. There was card games. A lot of times there was just. I'm trying to remember because
In the bunkhouse.
in the bunkhouse primarily, just guys that just a couple of guys that'd be playing cards, and they didn't seem to do while you're cheating at cards story games that much.
No.
Which is I think one of the things that helped the show is that
Well, the hands.
they stayed away from cliches too.
Yeah, the hands would never do that.
Yeah.
Not on
Oh,
that.
no, never. No. No, because if they did, Big John would be out there
Yeah.
weaseling his way into the game. Yeah.
Well, in the Virginian, there were a number of times in the bunkhouse where games would be going, Trampus would be trying.
Oh,
to
yeah. Well, Laredo was that way
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Corny show, but yeah, okay.
Back to cards.
Back to cards. What's on your plate for the future?
Yeah.
Before what happens with Kickstarter. So Kickstarter is just, testing the waters and then gathering the money. So when it ends on Monday, the money will come in, and then we'll buy all the decks, and then it's all a big balancing act. You don't know at the beginning of a project how many cards you might sell.
Mhm.
So you have to pick a point in space. I picked $6,000. That was X amount of decks, and then start to get more people involved. Then you get to buy more decks. The price of the decks gets to go down. And that's why I was able to put these stretch goals. So once I knew that the price would get down to a point, it was no longer a value for someone to buy a deck at $15 when I know I'm going to be getting it cheaper. So that's where we brought in the patches and then the stickers, so that there's some reason to get the value there. So all that stuff will be in created, and then we'll gather it all up, hopefully sooner than later. But I'm putting on a schedule, August at some point, to give me some room in case there's a little delay with the printing or something. And then it'll all get shipped out.
Cool.
And then again, I'll see when it ends how much I'm able to print over. But it might be one of those things where, because it costs so much to get a minimum order of cards made, there might just be the one printing, because
That'd really make a collector's.
Then they become
Yeah.
a collector's item. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to do one last break. We will be right back.
Where'd you find this?
This is Steve.
Steve something.
Yeah, Steve Lyons, or Steve. He's from Australia.
Crazy guy. He's on YouTube. He does this song.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
in the video, he goes up to Vietnam and shoots like an RPG and
Yeah.
stuff.
I can't remember the name of the full title, but it's just the guy's name, the Thompson Gunner.
Roland the Thompson
Roland
Gunner.
the Thompson Gunner.
That
You ever
was,
hear that?
That was Warren Zevon.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great song.
Yeah,
It's it's a kick-ass shoot 'em song.
Yeah. yeah. Well, and the last one I'm coming out with, it's only a 12 seconds piece, so listen and listen quick. Stand by.
And we're back with the last part of our show. We're with Pete Phillip, our guest. We're talking about playing cards made with, and it's a great topic and it's a great idea. And, I just happen to think, when we're talking about shows, it hadn't to do with cards, but Yancey Derringer, it had to do with guns.
That's right. It did.
Yeah.
the Derringer,
Yeah.
of course. 12 in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Jock Mahoney.
Jock O'Mahony. Jacques O'Mahony.
Yeah.
Nice. This guy was I was a friend of mine. I had one of the greatest friends I had. He'd call me up once a month when I was living out in California,
Wow.
and he'd say, "Come over to the house." And I'd go over to the house. He'd have a box of books for me. This guy read even more than I did. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Great guy. Though. Well, there's a couple of little pieces of the wrappers of American cards of the 1876 Centennial show a steamboat. Wrapper from an 1888 deck had a head-on view of locomotive number 45 coming at you. And what is it? And the court cards made by Russell Morgan and Company of 1881 are still in use today. And those are the ones that I mentioned earlier, that the faces were, the royalty cards. They're still the same ones. That was the originals.
And the bicycle company, they're still in business.
Yeah.
They're using the Velocipede on their. So, was this one from 1870? Is that the oldest one? I don't know when bicycle came into being.
Well, there's the bicycle cards go back earlier than that, because there was a case of not just the back of the card having the bicycle, but the bicycle, just like the baseball, when it came in, was such a craze that there was literally in fact, here, just to give you an idea, other cards in the 1880s are 2 games of baseball playing cards, one issued in Boston in 1884, the packed pictures of a baseball diamond with players and spectators in the costume of the times, and then another one, a series that was made in New York in 1888 with 72 cards, and it shows players of one of each of the 8 great teams of the day. So, and I can't imagine what kind of game you played with 72 cards, but maybe canasta. I don't know.
Never played canasta.
No, I didn't. But that's just
a lot of cheating.
Yeah, but the baseball, it was a fad and it was very popular. Just like and there's another point too: is manufacturers throughout times have had special cards next made to promote their companies.
Yeah. Well, we got about 2 minutes left, so talk one more time. Give the plug.
Thanks. Well, it's a deck of cards with a different gun on each card. They're from the Old West and Civil War days. They're available on Kickstarter till Monday evening. You can just head to Kickstarter.com and then type in Old West Guns or gun websites, and either one should find it. And again, I really want to thank you guys for doing the show. You guys doing the show every Saturday it's at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, in the old guns. And like I say, it was something that inspired me to make it into a form factor that's a little bit more consumable for people that are just casually interested, or they're